This is the same say lemon program we had before, but I've rewritten it slightly, and I've rewritten it using a do loop. Now the difference between a do loop and a while loop is that a do loop tests whether the loop should continue at the end. So it starts off with the keyword do and then a curly bracket, and it ends with a curly bracket, and then the while statement appears here at the end, followed by our condition: do we continue doing this loop or not? And slightly confusingly and annoyingly, in this case you have to put a semicolon on the end. Now we've declared our string variable yes no here. We haven't initialized it to anything. That's because we're going to initialize it in the body of the loop. Now because this test happens at the end of the loop, that means we definitely are going to do this at least once. We're going to do this here, these 3 lines, and then we're going to check whether we should do it again. So the difference between a while loop and a do loop is you do a do loop at least once. And we can see that this does exactly the same as last time, and it works identically. Now, as we saw, we could rewrite the version with the while loop by forcing the string yes no to have a particular value, in this case the value yes to start with, and have an ordinary while loop here, and that's fine, and you never need to use a do loop. It's always really a matter of choice or style, but personally I think this is clearer. We've got no repeated code in this case, and it's clear that we're going to do this at least one time before we answer this question. It's just much more obvious from the code, and it's often the case that you end up using do loops when you're doing validation of data input, when you're basically checking to see whether a user has typed the right thing. We're going to move on to look at a slightly more complicated example of that next here, because one of the things you'll notice up here, I didn't do this on purpose, but I made a mistake typing no, and it's just basically assumed that anything that isn't yes means no. And if you look at the logic here, you can see there's nothing to check the value of yes no other than whether it equals yes. Now in this case it's not a big deal, but you could well say, well, you could make a typo. You might have wanted to type yes and just type ye instead, and then it would have stopped rather than carrying on because it's not yes. So wouldn't it be better to check to see if the user had typed yes or no? And the answer is true, it would, and we'll look at that in the next video.